The air in the arena was thick, a velvet blanket of anticipation draped over 15,000 people. It wasn't loud, it was the opposite. It was a silence filled with yearning, the palpable echo of a missing piece. For years, the spot in the main event had remained unfilled, reserved for a legend who had simply vanished. His absence was a constant, dull ache in the collective heart of the fan base, a question mark hovering over every championship match. Tonight's main event was winding down, but the crowd's eyes kept drifting toward the entrance ramp, a foolish, hopeful glance. They held their breath, waiting for a ghost. The commentators had settled into a comfortable rhythm, their voices predictable and steady. Behind the scenes, the production crew was already calculating the final pyro cues. The internet was quiet. No dirt sheets had dared to whisper his name this week. The rumors had long ago exhausted themselves, becoming tired jokes. Everyone knew the man was done retired, pursuing a quiet life. The speculation had died, leaving behind only the cold certainty of finality. This was perhaps the most crucial element, the complete, absolute lack of expectation. Then it happened. Not with a bang, but with a sudden, deafening nothing. Every screen in the building went dark. The lights died. The commentators' mics cut out. The only illumination was the faint red glow of exit signs and the scattered, confused flashlights of the security team. It was total sensory deprivation, a deliberate act of theater that instantly turned the crowd's confusion into a primal, collective roar. They knew this language. This was not a power outage. This was a signal. The anticipation became a physical, electric thing, forcing the entire stadium onto its feet, screaming into the void. A single, ominous chord struck a low, mournful piano note that felt like the tolling of a great bell. It was the only sound for 10 drawn-out seconds. Then, from the blackness of the entrance tunnel, a plume of dense white smoke erupted, impossibly thick. A silhouette appeared, taking one slow, deliberate step. The smoke clung to him like a shroud. The crowd's roar didn't intensify, it instantly froze. It was a gasp, held by 15,000 lungs. It was him. Tonight, history didn't just repeat itself, it exploded. In the gorilla position, the atmosphere was utter chaos. The chairman, who usually ruled the chaotic domain with a stern, calm authority, was crimson with a terrifying blend of shock and rage. He had not authorized this. This was an unsanctioned breach, an act of defiance that tore apart months of careful planning. "Who knew?" he roared, his voice shaking the monitors. The head of creative simply held up his hands, eyes wide with genuine horror. Every key player was accounted for, yet the biggest name in the business was currently standing in the ring, rewriting the entire script in the current champion, a young, ambitious talent who had worked his whole life for this moment, stood bewildered inside the ring. He had just finished his match, victorious, poised for his triumphant celebration. Now his moment had been utterly stolen, reduced to a footnote in someone else's epic return. He stared across the ring at his idol, not with hatred, but with a complex mix of reverence and devastating realization. His legacy, his future, the validation he desperately sought, it all now depended on the next 5 minutes, a confrontation he was in no way prepared for. 1,000 miles away, in a quiet, secluded house, his wife watched the monitor, her face pale. She knew the cost of that walk. This was not a triumphant hero's return for her. It was a relapse. It was the immediate, terrifying shattering of the peace they had built together over the last 3 years. The pressure, the pain, the constant travel, the threat of injury had all returned with one single step out of that smoke. She gripped the remote, tears welling up, knowing that the man on the screen, that gladiator, was no longer the quiet, present partner she had cherished. Within seconds of the camera pulling in for the close-up, the media landscape detonated. Twitter feeds crashed. Stock prices for the rival company dipped. Every major news network was scrambling to verify the feed. The initial shock quickly turned to a frenzy of analysis. Was this a one-off? Was it a multi-year deal? How much money changed hands? The return transcended wrestling. It became a cultural event, a masterclass in psychological warfare and media manipulation. The shock was the story, and the world was desperate to consume every pixel of it. The man stood center ring, bathed in the sudden, blinding spotlight. He didn't speak. He simply pointed to the championship belt clutched by the young champion. It was a silent, devastating challenge. But the true weight on his shoulders wasn't the championship. It was the legacy of all those who had come before him, who had retired with dignity only to be tempted back for one more time. He knew the narrative was now fixed. He wasn't returning for glory. He was returning to prove he wasn't a ghost. He was returning to pay a debt only he understood. The young champion looked down at the belt, then back at the legend, and the crowd held its breath for the inevitable brawl. But the champion did not fight. Instead, he slowly, deliberately unbuckled the belt and laid it gently at the legend's feet. Then he raised his hand, not in surrender, but in a salute of respect. The twist was not a confrontation, it was a coronation. The champion walked away, leaving the belt and the legend alone in the ring. The message was clear. The return was not for the title. It was for the simple, devastating act of reclaiming the spotlight he had left behind. He had not returned to win a match. He had returned to prove he could still take the oxygen from the room.